It's dawn, 626 AD. Constantinople is awake, because it has to be. On one shore of the Bosporus, Persian banners. On the other, Avar drums and Slavic boats sliding towards the sea walls. The richest city on earth has nowhere left to retreat. Its back is to the water. This wasn't some sudden barbarian miracle. This siege was built, year by year, by exhausted treasuries, bad timing, and one Eastern war that refused to stay manageable. This is not just another Roman-Persian war. It's the last one. After centuries of bloodshed, after generations of emperors and kings trading cities, burning frontier forts, and fighting tens of battles across the same haunted border, this final war will end with an era collapsing in real time. To see how Rome ended up fighting for its capital beneath its own walls, we have to start earlier, when the empire was already bleeding again. The reign of Justin II had seen the Roman Empire come under pressure from all of its major frontiers at a time when it was still recovering from the high cost of the wars fought under Justinian, leading to the loss of territory in the West. While the West became more stable under his successor Tiberius II, however, it would be the wars in the east with Persia and in the Balkans against the Avars and Slavs that would prove most decisive, leading to a climactic siege fought beneath the walls of Constantinople itself. The reign of Maurice. The Emperor Tiberius II's reign would primarily be characterized by the many military campaigns fought from 578 AD onward, when he formally succeeded Justin as Augustus. Over the next 4 years, there were continued campaigns against the Avars, who took Sirmium in 582 AD, as well as the Persians, where the general Maurice continued to be victorious and even advanced up to the vicinity of Ctesiphon. That same year, however, Tiberius fell ill and died, and was succeeded by Maurice, whom he had promoted to Augustus the day before his death. In addition to being an experienced and skilled soldier, Maurice also reformed the administration of the western provinces by creating the position of exarch in Italy and Africa, who combined civil and military duties together, which proved to be an effective way to manage the West. He is also famous for writing the military manual called the Strategicon, offering advice on the army's function and how to combat the enemies it faced. After coming to power, Maurice personally led an army against the Avars in the Balkans, the first Roman emperor in over a century to take to the field in person. This aggressive strategy proved successful, and by 587 AD, the Avars and their Slavic allies had been defeated for the time being, allowing Maurice to focus on Persia. This war would gradually start to shift in Rome's favor after major victories in Mesopotamia and Lazica in 589 AD, as well as a Persian civil war which erupted in 590 AD, which saw King Hormizd deposed by the general Bahram. Hormizd's son, Khosrow II, was then able to secure direct military support from Maurice, allowing him to reclaim his throne in 591 AD, leading to Bahram's death. The Romans were able to extract considerable concessions from Khosrow, who now owed his kingship to Maurice, leading not just to the empire regaining all of its lost territory, but also dominance of the Caucasus, where the Persians ceded control of large amounts of territory. This victory allowed Maurice to refocus his attention on the Balkans in 593 AD, where the Romans won several victories over the Avars and Slavs over the following years. But despite his many successes, Maurice found his standing in the empire gradually declining, in large part due to his attempts to cut back on high expenditure on the army, until in 602 AD, a general named Phocas led a rebellion against him and was proclaimed emperor by the troops at the Danube. Maurice fled the capital, but was soon tracked down and killed by Phocas's troops alongside his entire family. Civil War and Invasion. Unfortunately for Rome, Phocas was unable to rally universal support in the empire, and from the beginning, he was faced with civil wars. This began in 602 AD when the general Narses in Mesopotamia refused to recognize the usurper as emperor and revolted, claiming that the son of Maurice, known as Theodosius, was still alive, though the figure propped up as this imperial heir proved to be an impostor. Narses also requested support from Khosrow, who quickly decided to take advantage of this lapse in Roman strength to invade, ostensibly in support of Theodosius and to avenge his patron Maurice. Khosrow defeated a Roman army at Constantia, who made further progress into Roman Mesopotamia in 604 AD, capturing the fortress of Dara. Narses was also convinced by another Roman commander to seek reconciliation with Phocas, but despite being promised mercy, he was executed by the emperor upon arriving at Constantinople. Phocas's popularity had, however, declined, leading to a rebellion against him in 608 AD, this time from the Exarch in Africa, a man named Heraclius. The civil war quickly spread to the Roman East, where Phocas's loyalists transferred troops from Mesopotamia to Egypt to repel an invasion from troops loyal to Heraclius, who seized the province in 609 AD after a hard-fought campaign. This withdrawal of troops from the east, combined with the subsequent civil war, severely weakens the frontier and allowed the Persians to conquer Mesopotamia and virtually all of Armenia by 610 AD. That same year, the elder Heraclius also abruptly died before he could seize the throne, but his son, also named Heraclius, was able to carry on the rebellion and soon arrived in Constantinople in person. Phocas's support had almost completely collapsed, and he was swiftly captured and beheaded. Heraclius's greatest concern was now the Persian invasion, with the eastern frontier having been left in a disastrous state. He attempted to negotiate peace with Khosrow, but the Persian king's confidence was by now soaring, and he refused. Khosrow's initial aims in the war are not very clear and may well have been limited to taking advantage of Roman weakness to gain wealth and prestige. However, with the Romans crippled by infighting and his invasion more successful than he expected, Khosrow's ambitions also increased, and he now began to push more aggressively into Roman territory, threatening Anatolia in 610 AD. Elsewhere, the war continues to go poorly for Rome, and between 611 and 619 AD, the Persians were able to conquer the Caucasus, Levant, and Egypt, meeting little effective resistance. In a symbolic blow, the true cross was even taken from Jerusalem as a trophy to the Persian capital of Ctesiphon. With the rest of the Roman East now entirely under Persian control, the front became focused in Anatolia, where the Persians had pushed all the way up to Chalcedon. Starting in 622 AD, Heraclius busied himself in reconstituting the imperial army, transferring troops from the Balkans to reinforce the Eastern army. Unfortunately for Rome, the conflict with the Avars had also resumed, and Heraclius's attempts to personally negotiate with their Khagan in 623 AD ended in failure, as the Avars instead ambushed the Roman delegation. In the east, however, the Romans were finally seeing signs of progress, as Heraclius's reorganized forces were able to bring stability on the Anatolian frontier over the next few years, winning several victories. Meanwhile, there was also some ongoing conflict in the west, where the Visigoths resumed their attacks in Spain and led to the empire finally losing control of its Spanish province in 624 AD. Heraclius' true concern, however, remained in the east, where the war was entering a new stage. The Siege of Constantinople. The Avars and the Persians were now both determined to strike at the heart of the Roman Empire, the capital of Constantinople. In 626 AD, the Avars placed the city under siege, bringing Constantinople under direct attack for the first time. Simultaneously, a Persian army under the general Sharbaraz was encamped across the Strait of Bosporus at Chalcedon and poised to assist the siege. The Avar army reportedly numbered up to 80,000 men, which included their Slav allies. Heraclius was not personally in Constantinople at the time, instead being with the main Roman field army in Anatolia, leaving the defense of the city in the hands of the Magister Officiorum Bonus and the Patriarch Sergius with a large garrison, including 12,000 cavalry. As dire as the situation appeared for the Romans, Constantinople was a formidable city to besiege. The capital was built on a peninsula guarded by sea walls and the Roman navy, while the approach on land was guarded by a series of layered fortifications known as the Theodosian Walls. The siege began with the Avars building several towers and battering rams and preventing the Romans from foraging for food, as well as constructing a wall of their own to pin the defenders inside. All the while, the Roman garrison launched sorties to disrupt the Avar lines. On the city walls, Sergius was personally inspiring the defenders and placed several icons of the Virgin Mary along the defenses to bolster morale. Once the Avar preparations were complete, they launched their first assault, supported by artillery, siege towers, and rams across the entire length of the Theodosian walls. But despite several hours of fighting, they failed to breach the city's formidable defenses. The following day, the Avars regrouped and launched another attack, but this similarly failed to make any headway. On the fourth day of the siege, the Slavs attempted to breach the defenses by sea, embarking a large contingent aboard rafts and making an assault upon the section of the city known as the Golden Horn. But this attack, too, was repelled by the Roman navy. While the Avars had yet to make any progress, they had recently been able to communicate directly with Sharbaraz in Chalcedon, and plans were in motion to bring Persian reinforcements to the other side of the strait. However, these troops were intercepted and crushed by the Roman navy. The Avars then launched another massive assault on the city walls, while at the same time their Slavic allies attempted a second amphibious assault on the Golden Horn. The attack ended in disaster, as the Roman navy once again intercepted the Slavs, while on land, the Avars failed to breach the defenses. This proved to be the turning point of the siege, as the Avars decided to abandon the operation and begin a withdrawal. Constantinople had survived its first, but by no means last, siege. Aftermath. This great victory led to the Romans being able to seize the initiative in the war and start to push the Persians back in Anatolia. The Persians were dealt a further blow when Heraclius intercepted a Persian messenger carrying orders from Khosrow to execute Sharbaraz, which the emperor chose to reveal to him, leading to one of the king's best generals rebelling. At the same time, Heraclius was able to negotiate a new alliance with the Turks, after which he launched the war's decisive campaign in 627 AD, later defeating the Persians at Nineveh. Facing little resistance, Heraclius captured the royal palace at Dastagerd, where he also recovered over 300 captured military standards. Khosrow's campaign of conquest had turned into a disaster, and faced with a resurgent Roman Empire and Sharbaraz's revolt, the king was deposed and executed by his son Kavad II in 628 AD, who quickly started to negotiate a peace treaty with Heraclius, but he fell ill and died the following year and was succeeded by his son Ardashir III, who was merely a boy. This left Persia with even weaker leadership and exposed it to the rebellious Sharbaraz, who made a separate peace agreement with Heraclius during a meeting in Armenia in exchange for Roman support. Sharbaraz then marched on Ctesiphon and had the young Ardashir killed in 630 AD. The peace treaty that followed proved greatly favorable to Rome, as Sharbaraz surrendered all captured Roman territory back to the empire as well as the True Cross, while also recognizing the frontiers established in 591 AD. Rome had managed to fight its way to victory after decades of warfare, but the cost had been high. The Roman military was still heavily depleted, while the empire's administration would largely need to be rebuilt. In Persia, the situation was similar, as its military had been seriously mauled, while its leadership was weakened by a series of usurpations. Even Sharbaraz was deposed and killed just 2 months into his reign, after which the Persians would be further distracted by a spate of civil wars over the next few years. That was until the young Yazdegerd III assumed power in 632 AD. What would prove to be the last Roman-Persian war had come to an end. But soon, both empires would be confronted by a new military power rising from the Arabian Peninsula. If you'd like to help us keep creating and get early access to our videos, behind-the-scenes content, and other perks, consider becoming a member right here on YouTube or joining us on Patreon. Every bit of support helps. And as always, thank you so much for watching.